What's up, you guys? It's Pam here with Living Fit, and I have a special guest in the house today. Well, not really in my house, but we're doing this virtual because Nicole Wilkins is here. So welcome, Nicole.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on. Nicole, you're a Michigan native, so this makes complete sense. If you guys, some of you may or may not know, but she is from Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're in Michigan.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Sterling Heights area, like right 20 minutes north of Detroit.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And now you live in California.
Yeah, I moved to the Temecula, like Southern California. It's about 45 minutes inland from San Diego in 2013. So yeah, I can't believe it's been that long, actually.
That's a long. I remember when you made that move because, like, the joy of social media is we get to kind of follow our favorite people wherever they go, and you're good about kind of sharing a lot of the different highlights and letting us kind of live along with you through your journey. So that's what I love so much, to be able to do. Kind of almost feel like we know you a little bit.
Yeah. Well, when you asked me to be on this podcast, it made me reminisce about the days when we knew each other back in Michigan and we're competing at the Redford Theater and all those fun times. So yeah.
Yeah, I actually had the honor to be on stage with you, on the same stages in Michigan, I think maybe once or twice. And then fast forward that. So, and then you got your pro card at one of the competitions that I was also competing at, was New York, correct?
That was Yeah, back then it was Team Universe and Figure Nationals, and they since split those shows and changed the names and all that stuff. So, I actually did figure and fitness at that competition because at the time it was, hey, you're already doing fitness, you may as well just jump into figure, and you're allowed to do that right now at nationals. And I ended up winning my pro card in both categories for the first time ever.
And it was the last time.
And the last time, because they didn't allow crossovers anymore after that. So that was a pretty cool moment.
Well, they didn't allow crossovers. Well, they didn't allow two pro cards to be won. So that would have bumped down to the second person in line, because you got the fitness and the figure pro cards. So you would have just given one pro card, and then the next person would have got that pro card. But so they made a rule after you did that. And I recently was talking with somebody, I think might have been a pro or somebody that was on a national stage, been competing for a while. Cause I'm an NPC judge. So I like to stay in the game at least somewhat, just because it's my roots. Yeah. And we were kind of talking about that. And I said, yeah, I remember being on stage with Nicole that year. She won. Cause you're a fan fave in Michigan forever because you're always like a Michigan girl at heart. And, and we all love Nicole Wilkins. And we were kind of talking about that, and they said, oh yeah, they'd actually just use that rule at one of the shows, a national show, because somebody was in two classes, I guess, and they couldn't give them both pro cards. They bumped it down to the second place or whatever the place was at that time. So it's actually still being put in play.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, change the game, right?
That's what it is, because nobody ever thought about that.
Right.
So you started out, I remember you being on stage. Did you started out in fitness? Did you start out in fitness and then you moved to figure because fitness was so hard on your body? Is that what was going on?
No. So my first show was at the very end of 2003, and figure was like a year old at that time. And I have a history of gymnastics, so it just made more sense for me to do fitness because I could do the routines and the skills required for it. The prep, as far as physique goes, wasn't too much different from one category to the other. So I entered my first show with fitness in mind, and then I crossed over and did both throughout the first probably 5 years of my career. And the reason I switched over to figure was just because at the pro level, I was more successful at it. I would have continued doing it. My last pro show was 2009, and that was the year I won my very first pro show, which was in figure. And then I won my Figure Olympia in 2009 as well. So after that, it was there's no point in me going back to fitness because I'm at the top of the game in figure now. Yeah.
Basically, they just were like, here, this is where you fit in. So we're just going to roll with it. Smart. Smart move. Many athletes should do that.
I was actually, the management company I was working with recommended that I continue to do fitness because fitness was dying out because so many more women were doing figure. And if you had the skills and to be able to do that category, they wanted you to stay in it because they wanted fitness to continue staying alive. But like my gut was like, I really feel like I could do better if I was in figure. Comparing to a lot of the girls that I was competing with in the pro fitness division, they were just so much better routine wise than I was.
Routines, maybe. Yeah. I mean, definitely. I think you created this standard for figure, because you won, I had to write this down because I would never remember, you won 4 figure Olympias and 3 figure internationals.
Yep.
Right. And there's not many people that have done that.
No, the figure Olympia title or record was beat last year by Sydney. But yeah, I still hold the figure international title. So
yeah. So you have set that bar, you remain that bar, and that your face and your name and all that is always going to stand out for those competitions. So we're proud to know you, and what an accomplishment, So real quick before we get into like the good stuff, because I do have, like I said, some listener questions that I posted a little box on my Instagram to ask you just kind of about lifestyle stuff and all that. But so what really got you into competing? You can make this real short if you want. I'm sure you've told this story a bazillion times, just so my listeners can kind of get a little understanding of why you wanted to compete in the first place.
Well, I was a competitive gymnast for 13 years, and I had multiple knee surgeries, which, kind of threw me out of the collegiate gymnastics realm. And I knew at that time, after I graduated high school, I wasn't interested in continuing on another 4 years in competitive gymnastics. So I needed another outlet to keep myself motivated. And that's when I started training a lot more in the gym. Actually started more in high school because my gymnastics coach was actually in the Olympic trials for powerlifting. And so I learned how to properly lift, the big moves. And I fell in love with the fact that I could be strong and see some more muscle definition. So I was actually at a friend's party and I met a local bodybuilder. He was like, you've got a lot of muscle. You should think about competing. He was a local bodybuilder. And so he helped me prepare for my first competition my freshman year in college. And I had my best friend at the time who was a dancer for the Automotion dance team on the Detroit Pistons basketball team, choreographed my routine in her backyard, and had a friend of hers cut my music. And I went to like this dance studio and had them create my costume off of an image I saw on Oxygen magazine. And I prepared, I think, for 8 weeks. It was a really short prep. And I entered my first show, but I had no aspirations of going really far with it. I really did it to give myself a goal in the gym, challenge myself. And I was in the health field as starting out as a personal trainer. And I thought if I could get myself in really great shape, it would help my business as well. True. And that was huge reason why, like all of those things together. And then I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed pushing myself and challenging myself, and it gave me an outlet. And so I just kept doing it. And at one point I was doing 5 or 6 shows a year. And then, but that's kind of how it started.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of, so you never really like had the aspirations to become pro. So we won't tell anybody that though. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. I'm sure you did once you started to get into the sport, but you didn't do your first competition thinking, oh yeah, I want to make a career out of this. You thought it was going to help your career in helping other people in health and fitness.
Yeah. I didn't think so far ahead. I thought, okay, I'm going to prepare for this show and I want to win this show. And then if I win this show, then I qualify for nationals. And then let's try to do as good as we can at nationals. And actually my first national show, I got smoked. I was like second to last call out after thinking I was going to do amazing because I was doing good in the state. And that was a huge blow. I realized like, okay, so here's my next challenge. Now I have to do better to, do better at nationals. It was never like, oh, I'm going to win the Olympia. I was always a pretty I was pretty real with what was going on. moment. Yeah.
Yeah, you've always been very like down to earth, I remember this is a side note and this is back to the Redford days. I remember you walking into one of the competitions to see it. I had some clients in the show. I think maybe you did too. I don't remember. You had already gotten your pro card. I don't know if you lived in Michigan or not. Maybe you did, but you were coming to watch a competition and it was at the Redford still, which I don't even think they're not at the Redford anymore.
No, I don't think so.
And one of the big guys at the time that was involved in Michigan NPC, I don't think he's involved anymore. He walked up to you and you were waiting in line to get a ticket. And he's like, "You're Nicole Wilkins and you literally are like the best in the state. You don't have to buy a ticket to watch this competition." You were like, "Well, I was just paying the promoter to go sit in the seat." Like you were, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's so humble." Like you didn't expect anything. You just walked in like anybody else. You have, you've always just kind of had that very welcoming, friendly attitude. Like, I'm just here to do my best. So that's a really fun memory for me to remember that, just thinking, wow, like that showed a lot of character. Because they're like, "Why is she paying for a ticket?" And you're like, "Why wouldn't I pay for a ticket?"
Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, that was a fun little memory. So moving on to some of the things that you are accomplishing now. So obviously you went into competing to help your business, which ultimately you really just wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. And that's really kind of full circle where you're at now. So now you have a daughter.
Yeah.
She's under 2.
Yeah.
She's so cute.
Thank you.
You guys, I'm sure most of you guys listening follow her on Instagram, but if you don't follow Nicole on Instagram, you can see her beautiful baby girl. What's her name?
Harper.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So she's a mom of 1 child under 2. You also are a CEO of Empower Nutrition. So that's a supplement company.
Right. Yeah.
And then, of course, she runs her own online business. I'm sure you have a team behind you, but you run online business, personal training. You have other coaches that work for you. You have online business. And then you also have ran these fitness camps. And before we got on air recording, you had told me that you kind of have cut a lot of those down. But those are camps that people can come to and train with you at your home gym.
Yeah, we at the moment we are doing camps in Michigan and in California. And the reason primarily for that is we can shut the gyms down in both locations because we either own it or I have a friend that owns it and we don't have to worry about other patrons in the facility. And that was one of the most challenging parts of hosting a large event is, being able to find a facility that can hold that many women for a weekend and not have it bother the people that are already members of the place. So where the future of the camps go, I'm not really sure yet, but right now we're still having fun doing it a few times a year.
Yeah. And they used to be bigger, but now that you've kind of you want to be home with your daughter, and makes a lot more sense to be home and not gone every weekend. Because how many did you used to run a year for those camps?
Yeah, we used to do around 10 to 12 a year, domestic and international. So we then kind of brought it into more just domestic locations. And then COVID hit and we had to basically cancel 8 different events and oh my gosh, what a disaster. So a lot of the gyms have either closed or are under new ownership. And, there was a lot of hesitation with large groups coming in from other locations with COVID. So we just kind of scaled things down a little bit. The camps were never really a huge revenue generator, but like in the grand scheme of what we're doing with the company, but it was an awesome opportunity. And it still is for me to meet the people who are our customers in person. And I love that social interaction, especially since I don't do a ton of like one-on-one training with people anymore.
To be able to have that exchange, the personal energy, because there is something about that. We can do online all day long, and I also run an online fitness business, but when I can get with those people like in person, it is different, and you feel that love, so that is a really cool thing for you. So I'm excited to kind of see where that goes. And I have followed along with that. And I've actually met a few people that, obviously in Michigan, that have gone to your camps, and they'll tell me all about it and how much fun it was and that kind of thing. So, as always, a great reputation for that. I wanted to talk about, you now. After competing, obviously you're a competitor at heart. You started doing like different competitions. Like, were you like, you learned to ride a bike? Not like a bike, like, like she didn't know how to ride a bike, but like professional, like what was it?
Yeah. So I knew at the
I
end of
remember
my,
watching your story.
yeah, so no, it's totally fine because I competed for 17 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yes.
at the international level for a decade. And at the end of my career, like the last few years, I knew that it was coming closer to the end of when I wanted to hang up my heels. You just get this feeling as an athlete where you're like,
I'm
I feel
done.
like I've done the best I can with this. And I know that this chapter is coming to a close. I want to be in control of when I say it's over. And that was in 2017. And at that point, after I was done, I felt really good with what I had accomplished and was ready to move on with the rest of my life, focus on my business. But as a competitor, you need a goal. And to me, just going into the gym and lifting was great. I was going to do that anyways, but I wanted to challenge myself and do something that I had never done before. So I thought, what is something that would be really different? And oh, why not train for a triathlon? So yeah, I found a local coach and I met with him and I explained what I wanted to do. And he's looking at me and I'm not a small girl, I'm not a triathlete build. And he's like, all right,
Okay.
do it. So yeah, I went and got a bike and I did not know how to swim properly. I know how to save myself in the water, but not do a proper breaststroke. So yeah, we worked multiple times a week and I followed through with every single thing he told me to do. And yeah, I ended up in the process flipping over my bike and breaking my thumb and cracking. I mean, it was a whole thing, but
I remember watching that whole story of you doing that. Like I said, like you share, so we kind of get to be like a part of it. So it's like really fun. And we're all like cheering you on and you're like, man, this sucks. Like,
yeah, I got my bike was all messed up. I had to get it fixed. And when I went to go pick it up, they were like, "Oh, you're the girl." And I was like, "What have you heard?" And he was like, "Oh, just some burly chick flew over her bike." And I was just I was laughing because that's how like triathletes, viewed a bodybuilder on this road bike. But I did actually compete and I got third. So that was pretty cool in my age class. And yeah, I've after that, I got kettlebell certified. And
didn't you do kettlebells after that? Because I remember like saying, I'm like, she just needs something to compete in, which I think a lot of athletes miss that. They do. And so you did the kettlebell.
Yeah, so I trained for 6 months for that because, we have basic knowledge as a trainer with kettlebells, but when it comes to like proper form and technique, I registered for it thinking this would be a really great like learning experience. But then I realized shortly thereafter that it was one of the more difficult certifications you could get with kettlebells. So I actually had to hire a coach and we worked together 5 days a week. So yeah, I learned everything. That was all virtual. So that was cool. But yeah, I got my certification, SFG1 kettlebell certification. And then that next month I got pregnant. So so that was the next challenge. So far I've been,
You've been challenged ever since.
Yeah. And then I got a couple pre and postnatal coaching certifications like through that process because I realized as a trainer that was something that I was kind of doing a disservice in many ways to a lot of my female clients without the knowledge of the importance of proper breathing and pelvic floor training and all of the things that women go through that they need help with. So
nobody talks about. I mean, some people talk about, but you really got to search it out, and like it's a specialty type thing almost.
It shouldn't be. I mean, it's almost like this
secret. The secret society.
Embarrassed to talk about, incontinence issues and stuff like that. But I mean, it's the reality of females, especially after they have kids. So like that whole process was really cool. I loved being pregnant and now, just with a daughter and navigating life with a child and how things change has been really fun.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about that. I saw that you were getting that certification just recently. And so you kind of just got that. And that was just to be very clear for everybody here, that was just to further your knowledge to help other people. Because like you kind of said, I think both you and I have been in the fitness industry helping other people for over 20 years. And Lord knows we've done things that weren't right because we just didn't have that knowledge. And so to continue that education, to say, wow, I didn't know that I should have been doing this with some of my female clients, or, whatnot. And that's kind of where you're like, okay, I need to get this certification so I can help more people because of what I went through.
Right.
Yeah. And which I think is awesome. So now you kind of opened that whole realm up, and you get to merge all of that knowledge that you've had to your camps, to your clients, to your coaches, to be able to help each individual, which is super cool. So that's why I wanted to kind of circle this back around. Like, your beginning to get into fitness was because you were a gymnast and you liked health and fitness, and you decided you wanted to help people. You started competing, that took off, and now you're back kind of where your original kind of mind was, where you get to kind of focus on working with people even more, to help their general health and fitness. Because you said you're the majority of your clientele are lifestyle and that kind of thing, not really necessarily competitors.
Yeah. Over the last 5 years since I've retired from the stage, my content that I put out isn't the same. It's cool to see how the audience has shifted from before. It was like 65% male dominant audience, based off of the images and photos that I was posting in the gym. And now it's like, complete opposite. So I have a lot greater female audience, which is what I wanted.
Sure.
And I think that a lot of that has to do with just my current lifestyle, and also being a mom and reaching out to that whole group of women who
and you're a new mom, which, we've all been a new mom when we were a mom. And, and like I said, for you to, because not everybody has the unique ability like you do to so casually share highlights of your life, where we all feel welcome in that, as high level as you are, you've never been intimidating to approach and to follow and to think, oh, I could never. You're like, no, it's good. Like, let's all like hang out. Here's what I'm doing. Like, so it's really fun to see that. So I wanted to ask a couple of questions that my followers wanted to know. So one of the first ones was, I didn't write this one down, was navigating pregnancy with your workouts. You kind of talked about that a little bit, but what would be like, just maybe real quick, a couple of tips for working out, maybe, differently, or did you do anything differently? What would be your best tip for people working out when they're pregnant?
Well, the best tip I can give anyone who's working out while they're pregnant is to listen to your body. I mean, there are going to be days where you feel really strong and days where you don't feel that great at all. The first trimester nausea, a lot of people have a difficult time getting physically active at all. And just to give yourself some grace and not put so much pressure on yourself, knowing that this is what I did prior to being pregnant, and I better be able to maintain that throughout. I think one of the things that was the most shocking to me was how long it actually did take to get back to what I felt I was prior to being pregnant. But at the same time, it was motivating too, because if I stayed consistent with it, it came back faster. It was nice to see that progress happening. But my goal throughout being pregnant was to, number one, make sure I stayed active, whether that was a walk or it was a stretch, or if it was a strength training routine. The bigger that you get, the more modifications you'll need to make. But yeah, I think just the biggest takeaway really is to do what feels good. And if you can be active, there are a ton of health benefits to staying active while you're pregnant.
Sure, because obviously there'd be some health conditions that would prevent them, if people were bedridden or whatnot. Yeah.
Totally.
And then what about after pregnancy, that small window, like after pregnancy? Because I don't know if you went through this, but I know the majority of moms that I talked to, and I didn't realize that I had gone through this until I was out of it. Postpartum depression, that's something that I think isn't talked about either in doctors' offices. I mean, a little bit, I guess, if you get a physician that's kind of aware of that or thinks to talk about that. But, I mean, they're busy and they're just really making sure your pregnancy health is healthy. But that postpartum depression. So did you suffer from any of that? Or is there any knowledge around anything like that? Because that was asked as well.
Thankfully, I didn't have any postpartum depression. I will say that your hormones are all out of whack the first, few weeks at least for postpartum. I remember being really more emotional. I'm not a very emotional person. And there were moments where I was definitely like, the first night we were home, I had a horrible experience breastfeeding. I really tried, and I just didn't produce enough. And that was harder on me, I think, than I realized it was going to be. But that first night, I was trying to feed her and she wasn't eating enough. And then she'd lay down after I settled her down and she'd start crying again. I'd pick her back up. And, it was just this repetitive thing. And finally, she was laying down and she was so quiet. And she let out like a man's fart. And I went from crying to hysterically laughing. And I think at that point, Ellen looked at me and was like, "Babe, are you okay?"
You're like, "I'm not okay.
I'm fine." Yeah, no, but thankfully I didn't have any like long-term postpartum depression. But two things that can benefit all women is seeing a therapist if you feel like you need it, talking to your doctor, not holding those feelings in, and having your partner be like, just be an ear to listen to whatever you have to say. Like, don't hold those feelings in. And the second thing is for recovery to see a physiotherapist to help, like a pelvic floor physiotherapist, which it's shocking because I had a cesarean and I had a like almost 50-hour induction, and it led to a cesarean. Yeah. And she was tiny and she was in the NICU for a little bit. So yeah, it was not the greatest experience for me birth wise, but yeah, I mean, I didn't train for 6 weeks or so after that for sure. Like I just didn't feel ready. I was walking within a couple weeks, but but my point was you go to the doctor a week after, and then you go, a couple weeks after, and then you go 6 weeks after, and then they're like, "All right, you're clear to go." I mean, you just had every layer of your abdominal wall cut in half. And if you were to have a knee surgery, you'd be sent to physical therapy for months to like help improve your strength and make sure that you're doing everything properly. But there isn't really that guidance after having a baby, whether you had a cesarean or not. I think it's a really great idea to look into a pelvic floor physiotherapist post having a baby, because you need to be able to strengthen those deep core muscles, and know how to have a proper connection breath between your pelvic floor and your TVA and all of those, your basically corset of your abdominals, so that you don't so that you heal faster and more efficiently. Especially if you're training too, because you want to be able to move your body properly through the exercises that you're doing. So yeah, that would be like a huge recommendation
to get that core strength. Yeah, I had 2 C-sections as well. They were planned though, so I didn't go through all that induction and stuff like that. That's crazy. That was the next question. Somebody asked if you had a C-section or a vaginal birth, and I think many times women, when they have C-sections, they love to see other women that have gone past that and gotten back in shape, because sometimes you do feel, especially if it was an unplanned C-section like yourself, and maybe you were feeling a little bit disappointed because you wanted a natural birth. Oftentimes they get discouraged, because I mean, when you have a C-section, like you said, they cut open your abs and you have this new baby and you don't really know how to be a mom yet. And and your baby's crying, trying to nurse, and it hurts and you're bleeding everywhere. And it's just, it's not very fun. So they get really discouraged, I find. So that was another question. They wanted to know if you had a C-section or vaginal birth. So that is actually, that's very inspiring. To hear that and to get that information, to say, hey, even yourself, here's a IFBB figure fitness pro and you are certified in these things, but you're like, go seek out somebody to at least give you some exercises.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they can do a lot more assessments that are out of the scope of a coach.
Yes.
So you really need to seek out a team of professionals. A team of professionals and not just one person.
I always like to mention that too, when I'm talking about personal training in general. And this is a whole nother conversation, and you would be very good for this conversation. And it could go a long way, but a lot of people expect personal trainers and fitness trainers to know a lot more than we do when it comes to health. and fitness. And you are 100% correct, where we need a team of people. Like, we are one of the team members of your wellness journey. We're not the only one.
Yeah, I think we are usually the first people to maybe notice certain cues or signs that something isn't right. And then it's our responsibility in a lot of ways to say, hey, I really do think that you could benefit from seeing someone else for this particular thing. And then we can all work together to make sure that you keep improving. Because it is out of our scope to like treat and diagnose certain things that are just out of our realm. So
and if somebody can get to that the core issue, let's say it's a knee or a hip or a pelvic floor, what have you, we can certainly, once we know that, we can certainly say, okay, well, they're taking care of that. We got the rest of this, because there's a whole other part of your body that we can get to work.
Yeah, we can work around it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so I love that you mentioned that. One of the questions was, do you think that competing for all those years took a toll on your body? I don't really know the context of what she was saying, but she just kind of posted that in there to see if you think that it took a toll on your body. Like, was it hard on your body? Do you think that, hormonally, we hear a lot of different things when it comes to competing? I have my own story. And again, like I talked to you about this before we started recording, you and I get to be on the other side of things, where now some of competing is glamorized because social media, it's just part of the world. And there's a lot of stuff that kind of isn't talked about, but then some stuff is negatively highlighted. So I think she just wanted to know, like, was anything stand out that took a toll?
Well, competing is a very extreme sport. So yeah, I would say that anything that is done to the extreme will have a toll in some way, shape, or form. I think the longer you do it, the greater that toll could be. The harder and the more drastic measures you take, the harder that toll could be, the worse that could be. It definitely took me a couple years after competing to kind of regulate everything and get my body to a point where it wasn't so inflamed and I didn't like fluctuate with my weight as much. And, am I as lean as I was when I was competing? Of course not. But I'm also at the point where I literally could eat whatever I want and pretty much stay exactly the same. So, I feel like everything is like really normal. It's my blood work is perfect. Everything is really in a really great place. And yeah, I do think that if you take extreme measures with your nutrition and your training, you're going to have to take some time after that to regulate everything and make sure that it doesn't go
haywire.
Yeah, for a long time, because that can have much more drastic effects long term.
Because I think a lot of people want to get there, get lean, stay there, and we both know that ain't happening.
I think people have. I think unless you've done it, you really don't understand what is required in order for you to get that lean. Not comfortable, and most people don't like to be uncomfortable. You are hungry and you're tired and you're training when your legs feel like dead weight. And sometimes you have a hard time sleeping because your body isn't recovering well. And, there's a lot of things that you mentally push through when your body is telling you probably shouldn't in order to reach that degree of definition. And it isn't sustainable. So when you see a photo like that, I think in some ways it can be inspiring that somebody has that like mental capacity to get to that point, but it isn't the healthiest thing.
And I think I don't know if you watched the interview I just had with Ann Titoni on, and she talked a lot about that, about how competing. One argument that I have had we both know the answer to this, was that bodybuilding is not a sport. I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course it's a sport. So let's hear it from Nicole Wilkins real quick, and they know who I'm talking about. Is bodybuilding a sport?
See, I think bodybuilding in a lot of ways is more difficult than a lot of sports because you have to have the nutrition component nailed down as well. So if you're playing basketball or football, you go to practice, you train hard, you go home, and you can have whatever you want. You can, to be a stellar athlete, you would want to make sure that you had your nutrition dialed in because it would affect your performance and your recovery and your strength and all that stuff. But with bodybuilding, your practice is going to the gym. And then when you get home, everything else has to be in place as well. Like
all the time.
All your nutrition has to be measured out and meticulously put in place. And you have to make sure you're getting enough sleep, and maybe even more so the leaner that you get. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of other things and factors that play a role in getting your body to look a certain way that a lot of sports don't include. So I think in a lot of ways, mentally, it's more challenging for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. So I'm going to clip that part and send that to the person who argues that. I'm like, I got a whole camp of people that'll fight you.
The person that probably said that never competed to know.
And so, but Aunt Tony and I were talking about, and this is something else. Like bodybuilding is a sport. It's fantastic. It can teach you so many things. We actually just had the Miss Olympia, Andrea Shaw on not that long ago as well. And like she said, she's like, bodybuilding will show you so much about yourself, and it will carry on to the rest of your life as long as you can hone that in, that structure and that, getting yourself up and doing all the things you need to do. But walking into bodybuilding at a professional level, especially like you did, and I never got my pro card, but I certainly trained just as hard with the pros. I never felt less than any of my teammates in that sense. You have to know going into competing that it is not the healthiest thing to do to look like that all the time. Like you said, you have to understand and come into the sport knowing, okay, I'm going to ride a line here. I got to make sure that I am taking care of my health. I am signing up for this. If I feel like something's off, I need to tell my coach. They're not going to know because they're simply writing me my plan. That could be your own advocate for your health, but going into the sport, understanding that it's not healthy to look like that all the time, and you need to have a plan to come off of that. And like you said, understand. And I think post-competition, when you're all done, that's something that a lot of people really never talk about. They talk about reverse dieting now and, getting back in that, but then they'll go to their bulk stage or whatever they call, I don't know improvement season, off season. And then, and then they'll get lean again, but nobody really talks about that couple of years, like you said, where your body's just freaking out and you're trying to like regulate your metabolism a little bit, that kind of thing. So that's something that people need to know going into the sport, to understand that those types of things may happen, and you have to be the advocate to seek out the information you need to make sure you're doing well, because not everybody's body can compete like that for that long.
Right. Yeah. I think it's really hard to do that, like to be your own advocate in some ways, because and I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I absolutely think if like in your gut, you feel like something isn't right, you should absolutely 1000% speak up. But if you are if you have the mentality of like a really hardcore competitor and you're willing to do whatever it takes, it's hard to know when that line is in some
cases. Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you kind of have to really get in tune with that. And I mean, I didn't care. I never would have said anything to my coach because I just wanted to look a certain way. So I wasn't listening to my body because like you said, at lots of points, you can't listen to your body because your body's like, sit down. And you're like, I can't.
Yeah.
Get my workout done.
Yeah. But I think you can hold yourself to like certain limits. And I think the more that you do it, the more that you know what those limits are. But I think if something doesn't feel right in your gut and you are more miserable than you're enjoying the experience, those are things
to talk about. Have a conversation at least. Yeah, for sure. So is there anything else that you wanted to share with anybody about general health and fitness? Maybe we're going to share in the description here, we're going to put your website, because you have a website. Obviously your Instagram is Nicole Wilkins. Are you on TikTok?
I am. I'm on Instagram and Facebook way more. I need to hop on TikTok. Yeah.
It's okay.
I like all dog stuff. I really need to like delete it and start fresh, because I got on it like when it first came out and never really did anything with it. So it's hard to keep track of all these social media platforms now.
It is. I recently just got on TikTok myself too, because I started one, canceled it, then I was like resistant, and then I'm like, am I too old for this? Like, and then I just recently got back on there. So we'll post obviously everybody can find you, Nicole Wilkins. We'll post that on there. But did you have anything you wanted to say?
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great to kind of catch up with you. And yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to reach out, Pam basically listed all the things. NicoleWilkins.com is the website where we have, one-on-one training. We have our challenge. We're finishing up a challenge right now. We're doing another one. It's going to be a build challenge. That one's focused on just gaining lean muscle. And yeah, we have a camp in Michigan in 2 weeks, and then one in California in a month and a half here. So yeah.
So you're staying busy. Yes.
Check me out on Instagram. Yeah. Reach out anytime.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Seriously, we love you so much. You, like I said, you're a fan fave in Michigan. So I hope to have you back on at some point. Maybe when your daughter gets a little bit older, and then we can talk about all the fun mom stuff. I told you before we got on here that I couldn't find my hairbrush or half my makeup because my daughter, she's 6 and she decides to take everything. So
oh my gosh.
We're going to share those stories. So thank you so much, Nicole. We just love you so much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.